So in November, we've had a series of folks come in talking about different issues. And we've had folks come in to talk about different issues, and today is hunger. So we had contacted Julia Tedesco from Foodlink.
Yeah.
But she has a sick child, so she can't make it. So she found somebody to fill in for her, some guy named Mitch. So he was graciously said he'd come in and do this. So let me introduce Mitch Gruber, Rochester City Council member and Chief Programs Officer at Foodlink. And if anybody knows about hunger, you know, it's Foodlink as an entity, but these guys just do so much with it. And Mitch also being, you know, part of the city government as well as Foodlink knows about it from a bunch of different angles. So we're really glad that he came out today and that he's here with us. So Mitch Gruber.
Thanks, Ted.
Thank you.
There's folks, do you wanna allow folks into the
thank you.
waiting room? Now, Ted, part of my ignorance here, I should know, how much time when do you want me to be done by? I'm like a wind up dog. However long you pull the strings, how long I'll talk.
10:15, so 55 minutes. You can take that much. You don't
Okay.
have to, but you can.
As I said, I am like a wind up toy. Hi, everyone. Good morning. Julia does send her regrets. She has a sick child. I'm sorry I'm a little bit late. I dropped my kid off at Sunday school at Temple Brith Kodesh. And it's really nice to be reminded that there's such an important interfaith mission right now to address hunger. I was at my synagogue over the weekend, talking to a group about this size, about what's happening right now in the world of hunger. I'm very happy to be here. And I know there's churches and mosques and other institutions all around the city thinking about this issue right now, the issue of hunger, probably to a greater degree than usual, in part because of the headlines, in part because of the holiday season. So I'm very happy to talk about it. I have to admit that Julia has a very nice, well-polished presentation. I probably won't stick to that. I feel sort of bad about that in advance, but it's just not the way that I process information. Oh, thank you. Great. I get to pretend like I'm giving a lecture. Put that over here.
So the screen is like shaven off the top of your head.
Got it. So you want me to put this here? Like that?
Yeah.
No one's ever really cared if they see my head or not. Okay, so I will I'll do Julia the honor of at least sharing our mission statement to leverage the power of food and hunger and build healthier communities. Our vision statement. Anyone care to read this for me? I'm in a place where people like to read things. Anyone willing to read this out loud? I think it's a very powerful vision statement. Any volunteers?
I'll read it out.
Thank you, Beth.
We believe that the fight against hunger and the fight against poverty are one and the same. We envision a future in which food is recognized as a human right, and every person is able to feed themselves and their families in dignity. Together, we work to create a more nourished, prosperous region.
Thanks, Beth. I'm going to come back to this vision statement in just a second, but let me finish just a couple of kind of administrative pieces. This is our footprint. We cover a 10-county service area. So we have the city of Rochester, which is where our headquarters are located, but then we also cover 9 adjacent counties. There are about 210 food banks across the country. All of them feed up into an organization called Feeding America. And Feeding America has essentially chapters. Everyone is different. In New York City, there's 4 food banks for the 5 boroughs. In the state of Wyoming, there's 1 food bank for the whole state. We're a pretty mid-sized food bank, 10 counties. We distribute about 25 million pounds of food a year within those 10 counties and have trucks that are navigating all 10 of these counties on a 6-day-a-week basis. So again, pretty much a mid-sized food bank, but what's unique is that every food bank kind of has their own method of doing the things that they believe are important for their community. So I will eventually come back to Julia's presentation, but let me stop for a second and go back to our vision statement. And even the way that Ted introduced the subject and the topic that I'm here to talk about, I think it's very important to level set and acknowledge that there really is no such thing as hunger in Rochester, New York, or in Monroe County, or in the United States of America. Hunger is not the issue. It's a word we use to describe the larger issue, which is poverty. There is no person in Rochester who can't access food for any reason other than money. We happen to live in a place where we have some of the greatest grocery stores in the world. I mean, what a marvel of modern society that I can get pretty good bananas 12 months out of the year here in Rochester, New York, right? And for not that expensive in the grand scheme of how much it costs to grow and distribute and transport those bananas, I can get them 12 months a year like clockwork, and I can get to Wegmans, what are they open, 18, 20 hours a day? If you have the ability to get from point A to point B in Rochester, which is a personal car, and you have a credit card with a decent amount of capacity on it, you're not hungry. It's just that simple. If you don't have those things, it becomes very, very difficult to be able to make ends meet. And even the idea of, I mean, if we just unpack the idea of a car for a second, we have I think a slowly improving public transit system in Rochester. But if you're someone who uses public transit to get to the grocery store, not only does the trip take significantly longer, I mean, it may take, we don't have buses that go directly from someone's house to a store. You're going to go to the transit center, you're going to be transferred somewhere else. We're probably talking about an hour plus many times, depending on the store. But then to come home, oftentimes you're actually limited by the number of bags you can take on the bus with you. I mean, you can't take 20 bags on the bus with you. The bus driver simply is not going to let you do that, not because they're trying to be obstinate, but because there needs to be room on the bus for people to sit. It just makes it incredibly challenging and difficult if you don't have a personal vehicle, or if you don't happen to live in very close walking distance and have the ability to walk to the store. So having a car, pretty significant expense. About one out of 4 Rochesterians do not have a car. And that number increases, as you can imagine, it's closer to 1 out of 2 in the poorest zip codes in Rochester. So half the people in our community do not have private transportation. And then, of course, the bigger issue, as we all know, is what it costs to go to the grocery store these days. And this is a reflection of rising food costs, generally speaking, across the board, across the country, across the world, frankly. But it is exceedingly difficult to be able to get to the grocery store and to be able to buy the food you need if you don't have a significant amount of cash in your pocket or a credit card. Now, I want to unpack that a little bit further and give a specific example. If you are a single mother of 3 and you have $20 in your pocket, I just want to be very clear about something. It is the right economic decision, the correct economic decision to go to McDonald's and buy 3 Happy Meals. It may not be the right decision for the long-term health, but it is the right economic decision versus trying to take that $20 and stretch it towards the ingredients for a salad or something like that. You simply are not going to fill your kids up for nearly as long. You're not going to make the obviously protein is one of the biggest expenses we see in the store over and over and over again. And so even though it is the decision that we probably collectively as a society do not want people to make, is eat fast food each and every day, at the end of the day, it is probably the right economic decision. We have made the economics of eating healthy incredibly challenging. Incredibly challenging. And it's one of the great, I think, one of the great failures of our public health psyche right now is, when the great big public health win of the last, ignoring Project Warp Speed and the COVID vaccine, which of course is its own huge success. But prior to that, smoking cessation was one of the great wins of public health in our country. And when people were telling folks to stop smoking cigarettes for their health, they were also telling folks to make what was ultimately a smart economic decision, right? I don't want to dispute how difficult the mental side of addiction is. It's not an easy thing to do, But you're telling people stop buying a thing, actually make a wise economic decision. Now we're telling folks, go eat healthier, go eat healthier, go eat healthier. But if you live on Joseph Avenue and don't have any access to a grocery store, eating healthier is simply a matter of just spending significantly more dollars. Significantly more. And there's always, usually at every one of these talks that I give, there's always someone who's thinking in the back of their head, well, if you grow enough tomatoes and can them and preserve them, I understand, I take the point. But we live in a world where most people don't have that kind of luxury of time. Unfortunately, it's one of the sad realities of the world we live in. And again, we are making it as a society incredibly difficult and challenging to be able to eat healthy, in particular, if you're someone who does not have any kind of significant dispendable income. So that's that. I belabor that point a little bit because I think that sometimes we actually lose sight of what the problem is when we just talk about the words like hunger and food insecurity. They're not isolated things. They're just not. And I'll share a quick personal anecdote. One of the reasons why I came to the world of Foodlink and started working in this space, and Julie and I together have been at Foodlink for 17 years, which is very wild to think about. One of the things that led me here was in 2008. I was it's a long story, I won't go into all of it, but I found myself in Zimbabwe. And Zimbabwe in 2008 was experiencing the highest recorded rate of inflation in human history. As long as economists have been recording inflation, Zimbabwe between like 07 and 09 had the highest recorded rate of inflation. The entire economy was broken, and there literally was not enough food produced. I remember very well standing in line. In most places I was in Zimbabwe, just the fact that I had any American currency at all, like whatever there was, people wanted my currency because of the economy, and so I could oftentimes get the things that I was looking for. But in the grocery store, there simply was not enough bread or milk or eggs or cheese or meat. It just wasn't being produced. People would wait in line for hours until it actually came that day. That's a place with real actual hunger. That's a place where if we went to the hospital system and asked about the number of people who actually died from malnourishment and starvation, you would find substantial numbers. That is not the problem that we have in this country. We don't have a lack of production. We don't have people who are finding themselves in the hospital because they're not getting any food at all. We have a system where the poorer you are, the harder it is to eat healthy. And therefore, we have an absolute catastrophic reality where the poorer you are, the more likely you are to have diabetes, hypertension, heart disease. We're a country that has kids with type 2 diabetes, children with type 2 diabetes. So even though I said before the smart economic decision is buying the cheeseburgers, the Happy Meals, I recognize that's not ultimately the right long-term decision for people's health. But this is the dilemma we've given people to make. So that's why I think it's really important to level set that and understand that the work that we're all doing together, and just to be clear, before I talk too much more about Foodlink, we only exist to serve places like Third Press. That's the reason why we exist. You guys have been a phenomenal partner for longer than I've been around at Foodlink. And we have hundreds of other churches that we support and try to make sure that they have the food they need to serve people. But we only exist because we occupy a food system where it is just increasingly hard to be healthy and to eat well in this country. We don't have a lot of money. And then you take that and think of what the federal government just did. Making the food stamp program, or SNAP, and I'll use those terms synonymously just so folks know. They were called food stamps forever since, and by the way, the first food stamp ever distributed was here in Rochester, New York. Late 30s, maybe early 40s. It was a kind of pilot program. Mabel McFiggin was her name, was the first recipient of this program. And then in the 60s, the federal government passed the Food Stamp Act. But in the 90s, they changed the name technically to SNAP, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. It is still widely called food stamps. Typically, you'll hear that's how people talk about it, but I'll probably switch back and forth. So we have a program that is ultimately the most effective, not just anti-hunger, but anti-poverty program. Anything that we all do together, the charitable network through faith communities, through food banks, all of it pales in comparison to what food stamps does for people. It puts money in their pocket to let them buy the foods that they need. And it's simple. And in my mind, I don't actually understand exactly what people are thinking when they let it become a political football, because one of the most beautiful things about it for even people who don't care about social services is that every one of those dollars flows back into the local economy. It's all spent right here. The program is remarkably efficient. There's not a huge amount of administrative lag in it. People have an electronic benefits transfer card, an EBT card that is basically a debit card that every month new dollars get rolled into your card based on what your income is that you have to verify every year. And you get to go spend that money on food in local businesses. Seems like a pretty good thing to do, right? Well, as you all know, the government shutdown, food stamps became the political football. And I would say in a lot of ways, one of the reasons why the shutdown ended when it did, because people really started to feel the pain of this. That and delays in airports seem to be the two things that really made the federal government start to feel the pain. And I'll just back up and tell you all a little bit about the food stamp program in terms of the mechanics of it. It's $8 billion per month. Very expensive. Can't deny that. It's $8 billion a month. And that is ultimately the reason why it became the political football. The WIC program, which is an incredibly important federal nutrition safety net. WIC stands for Women, Infants, and Children, and it is for women and caretakers of babies. A dad can apply for WIC if they're a single father. Grandparents can apply for WIC, but it's predominantly mothers getting specific foods to be able to make sure their children are healthy. And that program, early on in the government shutdown, I'm talking like October, the shutdown started October 1st, maybe a week later, Trump's press secretary is standing at the podium and says, we are going to fund the WIC program because the Trump administration will not allow for mothers and children to go, babies and mothers to go hungry. And they took $450 million from their tariff revenues and put it right into the WIC program. That was an early announcement. I actually thought to myself the whole time, okay, well, based on what she said, I actually don't think that food stamps are going to be the political football. They're going to figure out a way to fund this. But that's unfortunately not the way it panned out. By the middle of October, the Trump administration stated that they were not going to pay for food stamps. So that $8 billion. They said they're not going to do it, even though they had the money sitting in a reserve account that was, frankly, for purposes like this. But their legal team made the argument that it was only for natural disasters, not a man-made disaster like a government shutdown. So they said they weren't going to do it. It started all sorts of movement, lawsuits, and new bills being proposed, bipartisan across the table, a lot of movement happening. But in the meantime, there was just absolute panic by people who rely on the program, absolute desperation by people who rely on the program. I talked to SNAP participants every single day and kept checking in with them. And there were, I know a mother of 4 who gets $700+ per month, usually on the 3rd day of the month. And she said to me, I literally don't know what I'm going to do if I don't get this money. And I'll come back to that statement and the work that we all do together. But let me just kind of make sure I really paint the picture clearly of what the crisis was. Not everybody gets their SNAP benefits on the 1st of the month. Everyone gets their benefits in New York State, and I don't know if it's like this in every state, but in New York, it's between the 1st and the 9th of the month. And it's totally random. Everyone has, like I said, an EBT card, a debit card. It's got a random number on it, like all your credit cards do. And depending on what your number starts with, that's the date that you receive your benefits. It's random. There's nothing else to it. Everyone gets them from the 1st to the 9th. It was probably in the third or fourth day of November that the Fed said, okay, fine, you guys can all make partial payments. I said, we'll allow partial payments. Now, I spent a long time talking to people in every layer of government trying to understand how would partial payments actually be calculated, and no one knew. I still think actually to this day, no one knows how that would have been done. It had never happened before. And as I said, it's an easy program to administer. Mr. Smith's file says this is what Mr. Smith gets on the 4th of the month. The file transfers over to the vendor of the EBT program and the dollars go over. Now, if you have to start figuring out how do I do 65% of Mr. Smith's and 42% of Mr. Jones, I don't actually know that any of the mechanics behind the scenes would have been able to handle that. So government starts to absolutely scramble 100%. No one knows what's going on or how to do it, but they start working towards it. I'll give the state, and so everyone knows the food stamps are run by the USDA, federal government, or administered by the USDA. Then they flow down to the state. And in New York State, our department is the Office of Temporary Disability Assistance. And then from there, it flows down to the county, Monroe County Department of Human Services. They're who actually administer the final payment to the individuals in our community. No one knew what was going on, but they were all trying their best. And then the Trump administration said, all right, we're willing to pay out, like every department, every state should get ready to pay out benefits in full. They said that on, I think, the 7th or 8th, maybe the 5th or the 6th. It's all a blur for me at this point. And then right after they said that, the Trump administration sued to block from what their memo said. There was just massive whiplash, and it was all about confusion. Everybody was confused. No one knew what to do or where to go. And I will give New York State a lot of credit. I may not have if I was talking to you 2 weeks ago, because I would have liked for this announcement to come faster. But I give New York State a lot of credit. Governor Hochul said, as soon as that memo came out, we are going to fund the program in full. She facilitated the payments to be started to people. She truncated those 10 days, the 1st and the 9th, into 5 days, and everyone got their full payment between Sunday of last week, between a week ago today was when the first payments hit, to Thursday. And she did that knowing very well that there is still a chance that we don't get reimbursed for all those. And in New York State, it's about $700-800 million per month. In Monroe County, it's about $20 million per month. And everyone acknowledged, well, I shouldn't say they acknowledged, I'm sure everyone acknowledged that there's a chance, because I'm certain that the feds are still going to fight this in court, that there's a chance that some of these payments are not reimbursed. But New York did the right thing, and now everyone in our community who was expecting their SNAP benefits has received them. That is not the same in every state across the country. There are still many states where SNAP benefits have not been dispersed, which is really, really incredibly sad, especially coming up on the holiday season, knowing that people's needs are already greater. So that's the story of the crisis that we were just in. And I mentioned this mother I talked to who said she didn't know what was going to happen if her, I think it was $740 didn't come on the 1st or the 3rd of the month. The answer to that is the Emergency Food Network. The work that we do together is very, very capable of being able to fill in the gap and provide people a Band-Aid. It's a Band-Aid. We cannot provide neither Foodlink nor pantries or meal programs like the ones Third Press has can provide everyone with every ounce of food they need. We can't do that. We need to have decent government programs that provide a safety net for people for that to happen. But what we can do is if Mrs. Smith knows that she's not going to get her SNAP benefits on the 3rd, but is going to get them on the 12th or the 15th, we can figure out how to marshal together a lot of support collectively to make sure she has the food in her pantry for those 10 days. And we really did that as a community, I think exceptionally well. I'm certain that the numbers at the food pantry here were probably at an all-time high. I see some head nodding. And I would hope, I'm certainly open to feedback. I would hope that the folks who are doing the ordering for Third Press acknowledge that there was probably more quantity involved and more diversity of product and quantity of product available from Foodlink than probably ever before in the last month. And the reason for that is because collectively we all figured out how to fundraise together, how to make food drives happen together. The number of times that people came to us and said, we want to do a food drive, how can we help? And we directed them to another food pantry. Individuals call me every day and say, I want to write a check. Do I write it to Foodlink? Do I write it to the pantry? I try to get people to support their local pantry first and foremost on a micro level. On a macro level, we brought in over $1 million in an emergency food fund in the month of October and spent all of that on food. And I'll get to that in a second, but let me first back up. First, any questions about the crisis of SNAP or the SNAP program at all that I can answer for people if they're burning questions? Yes.
So we're good for 1 month in New York State.
No, we're good through September. The bill that the feds signed to reinstate the government funded only a few departments through the end of their fiscal year, and one of those departments is agriculture. So food stamps, as we know them, are funded through September of next year.
Yeah.
Now, that being said, the bill that was passed back in July, whose name I won't state, it has cuts, significant, substantial cuts to food stamps that are not cuts in terms of the total dollars of the program. They're cuts to who will be eligible for them. And we're going to start to feel that pain in this community as early as January, February. And I'm happy to talk about that. That's a bit more in the weeds. So I'll probably choose to come back to that in the end. But there will be no more cessations in the issuance of SNAP benefits through September, and I would hope and believe that past that as well. Any other questions about SNAP as a program at the moment? Yes.
Mechanics, how do the recipients of these know that money is going in there during this crisis?
Yeah, everyone has access to it's an app on your phone, or it's a website. It's called EBT Edge. It's the formal website, and frankly, I will say that pantry volunteers should know how to use that in case people have questions about it. But EBT Edge, like EDGE, and you can pop in your information. I don't have it in front of me, but I think you just put in your card number and probably your date of birth.
So this presumes that most everybody then has a smartphone.
Computers work, smart, yeah,
Microphone.
and there's also on the back of the card, there's I think it's a 188 number or something. People can call and ask if they choose to. I think that becomes a lot less efficient. And I really do, I mean, I spent a long time the last couple of weeks asking people about EBT Edge and making sure people were noticing and looking at their account. And I think people really are pretty accustomed to doing so. Any other questions about SNAP? Okay, so let me zoom out a little bit and talk just about how Foodlink works functionally. So we're the regional food bank. Now, I try not to be in my, there was a moment in my life, I got a PhD from the University of Rochester, and I used to think I was going to be an academic. I try to ignore that moment of my life. No offense to any of the academics in the room, but there are some times where I get very distressed by the semantics of words. I don't know there's another word that's more misused than food bank. There's only one food bank. We are the only food bank. We are the wholesale network of the emergency. We're the wholesale arm of the emergency food network. Then there's multiple food pantries, food cupboards, food shelves. You can name it a whole bunch of things, a soup kitchen, a community meal program, all the places that are the retail side of things, right? The folks who serve hungry people. We do not serve hungry people at Foodlink. We serve the organizations that serve hungry people. And the reason for that is because there needed to be some kind of volume and scale for this work over time. Foodlink was founded, brief origin story, 1978. Tom Ferraro, the founder of Foodlink, my mentor, Julia's mentor, started Foodlink as a program of action for a better community. And he understood there was a lot of food pantry that didn't have a whole lot of kind of organized structure, mostly in churches. I would presume places like Third Pres probably were giving out food back in the 70s, well before the idea of food banking existed. Tom went on the Eddie Meath show. Any big Eddie Meath fans in the room? Pat Tobin, big Eddie Meath fan. I mean that. Tom went on the Eddie Meath show this time of year, right before Thanksgiving, and made an appeal. And he got a call back that day from Thomas English Muffins, who used to produce at the Genesee Valley Regional Market Authority in Henrietta. And they called and said, if you come down to our warehouse, we'll have more bread products you'll know what to do with. So Tom drove down his little wood paneled station wagon and quickly turned back around because he had to commandeer a bus from ABC because that's how much extra product there was. And so the idea was there's so much excess in the food system. And there is. Again, we occupy where there's no shortage of food being produced or sold or wasted in this country. Tons of food waste, if you want to talk about a really very difficult issue to address because it's so much about individuals' behaviors. But there's just so much food, and Tom realized that. And so him and many other people in their communities at the time were starting food banks. Our job is to be able to make it so that when a place like Barilla or Mott's or Seneca Foods or Kraft or any of the big food manufacturers in and around Monroe County call and say, hey, we have excess food, that they only have to make one stop, right? They don't want to bring 10 cases to Third Pres and 10 cases to First Genesis and 10, they want to bring a truckload of food to us. When Wegmans, who still is at this point is honestly probably the leading retailer in the country when it comes to donating to food banks, there are very, very, very few grocery stores who do any level of the donations of food specifically to food banks that Wegmans does. They don't want to send 3 cases to various stores. When Wegmans gets a shipment of things, something like grapes, this time of year, it'll actually be, you know, all sorts of the types of produce that you're going to shop for Thanksgiving. If a truckload comes in 1 degree off temp, Wegmans is going to donate that entire truckload to us. They're not going to donate a few cases here, a few cases there. They're not going to throw it out. They're going to donate it all to us. Other grocery stores, mind you, are more inclined to actually sell that product on the tertiary market. One of the reasons why let me back up. Foodlink gets our food from 3 sources historically. Manufacturers, as I mentioned. Now, mind you, manufacturers are very inclined to make less errors, right? Moss does not want to put too much cinnamon in their applesauce. I like it when they do. That means we get a full truckload, but they're less likely to do it. And they're getting better and better and better at not doing it. So we're seeing donations from manufacturers decline. Also, we live in an incredibly, I'm preaching to the choir, just an incredibly corporatized environment where donations don't feel the same anymore. Seneca Foods, which was Seneca Foods because of Seneca Lake, is now owned by a larger company that's headquartered in either Wisconsin or Michigan. So the donations that we once saw from Seneca Foods are typically bypassing us now and going out to the Midwest. So that's one source. Manufactured food, we're seeing some decrease there. A second source is retail product, which used to be all sorts of retailers providing lots of different things, and now it's virtually just Wegmans. Now, there are other retailers. Does Third Pres pick up from any retailers? No. So we do connect some of our food pantries to individual retailers who want people to pick up small volumes. There's a couple Targets, for example, of small volumes of food to be able to give out. And it's not enough for us to send a truck, so we connect them to an individual food pantry. But for the most part, it's Wegmans stores providing the food back to Foodlink for us to put on our shopping list. A lot of the stores that once donated food to food banks, this is not just in Rochester, everywhere, now sell their food they would have once donated to a tertiary market. Places like Save-A-Lot, Family Dollar. You go to the public market every Saturday. All the food there is stuff that at one point would have gone into the emergency food network, and now there's just new retail outlets for it. That's fine. It is what it is. I'm glad the food's, for the most part, not being wasted and still getting to people, but it means less food for food banks. The third source is surplus commodities, which is now called the TFAP program, but it started as government cheese, right? We all know the story of President Carter buying surplus cheese from American dairy farmers and storing them in actual government-owned cheese caves. I'd like a tour of those someday, and distributing them to food banks across the country. Now it's every surplus commodity, and you see it in the Third Pres pantry. I'm sure you could order a lot of USDA product, but it's everything from dates to nuts to canned chicken, anything that American producers have a surplus of in such quantity, and the federal government purchases it stores it, and gets it to every food bank at no cost, which is wonderful. That's a great program too. We're nervous about it when the administration changed. The Trump administration actually canceled 17 full truckloads that would have come to us early on in their tenure, but it's now back on track where we are where we need to be with that program. There's always an issue with it though, which is that it really is meant predominantly for natural disasters. If there is a hurricane or a tornado or a giant flood or something like that, and we ordered stuff but have those issues are not happening here, the food we ordered is probably going to be diverted to whatever part of the country it's more needed in. So it's a bit of an unstable source of product. So to address that, Foodlink is now essentially a gigantic purchaser of food in a way that I never, ever, ever would have guessed 15 years ago, and that Tom never would have guessed. When I started at Foodlink, we were distributing about 8 million pounds of food a year. Maybe 500,000 of those pounds were purchased product, and we spent a couple $100,000 on food at the most. Now, 25 million pounds of food a year is the size of our food bank, and we're spending $10 million a year on food. That is just the nature of how it works now. The demand continues to grow like crazy, and the donations are not coming with it, so we become more of a food purchaser. Beth?
There's a lot of food covered folks in this room. I, for one, am puzzled by the headway boxes, because we have to break those down immediately and to various groups. And could we just get bags of apples? What's the nature behind?
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So the Headwater boxes, so Headwater is a local, I guess the business would be called a food hub. They buy from local farmers and aggregate and then sell them into markets. And we recently started to, well, not recently, in the last 5 years have purchased a lot from them because we wanted to have as much local product as possible in our distribution network. And it's very difficult for us to go talk to individual small farmers ourselves. So they kind of do that work on our behalf. I would say the answer to your question is that most food pantries do not break down those boxes. Those boxes exist because they're meant to be turnkey, going directly to a family. But I also recognize that depending on what your mechanism is for distributing food, it may not work for you. And we should talk about that afterwards. But this is the nature of how food banking works. And I'm interested in digging more into that. So across our 10 counties, we serve about 300 different partners like Third Press. And every one of them functions so incredibly differently. I mean, some of them probably have similar operating models, but when it comes to days of the week, hours that they're open, number of volunteers, is it paid staff? Is it volunteers? Some of them are really, really hurting for people right now. Others of them feel like they have more people willing to spend the time and effort than ever before. Some of them have no money. Others have money they don't know what to do with. And our job is to try to figure out how the verb I tend to use is we convene and support that network. We're never going to give you or any other church everything they need. You're always going to have to figure out how to incorporate some of your own stuff and also your own kind of culture of how you want to be an organization. But the idea for those boxes are, how do we make it so that you can get as much quality local produce as possible in an easy to go package? And if it's not working, we should talk about it.
Recycle.
But you don't feel it, but the boxes are not, the sizing of them is not good enough it's not right to give to people directly.
So we like to give choices, so we'll take the 5 different produce in them and put them in piles, like apples, cabbage, onions, whatever. And then people get to choose what they want. Maybe they don't want onions this week, maybe they want apples.
Yeah.
So there's less waste.
Yeah, and no doubt, I mean, God, as you well know, client choice is one of the mantras that we, am I talking too long?
No, I have to go to work. No, but I want to say thank you. This has been great. I am curious though, here at Third, on the mission outreach side, we kind of focus on, we got it down to 2 issues, right? Homelessness, housing, and hunger. And we really focus on those things. And the hunger side, we do a lot with food. right? We help, First Genesis, People's Pantry, Our Zone. We do a lot with food, which is for the hungry. And I'm just curious though, like you're saying that there's a sort of a misdirection there. The hunger is a misdirection, if you will. It's about poverty.
I
So,
wouldn't call it a misdirection. I mean, that's how I would call it on a macro level. On a micro level, someone needs to make sure that the woman I talked about has food between the third of the month and the 12th of the month. And you only do that through food.
right. Well, the question I think for us, and again, I can't listen to the answer, but like, is there something more or different that we can do on the poverty side? Or is it just above us, this little place here? So just kind of both.
Okay. Yeah, I guess my answer to that is I think there's general work that all of us have to do in this community when it comes to addressing poverty. But, and I'm happy to circle back to some of that. I think that one of the great roles for the faith community to play is to feed people. I don't think it's a misdirection. I think that it's an incredibly important, it's what makes the Emergency Food Network work so well is that we don't make people have to wait in line, have sometimes an undignified experience, prove that you're poor, give us your RG&E bill or something like that. People just get to show up, to talk to people who they know respect them, who they know are here to serve them, and get the food they need. I think there's nothing more beautiful than that, and sometimes I would actually argue that collectively we should have an advocacy muscle as a society, as a city, to look at bigger picture items, but a church individually should absolutely be feeding people if it's what you're called to do.
Right. Love you guys. Love you. Thank you.
Yeah, good to see that. So let me wrap up a couple last things about how Foodlink functions, and then Julia will be so upset that I didn't do her presentation at all, but yeah, I will. Yeah, I will.
Sorry.
But here you have a little bit of a sense of all the different things that we do. But I tend to break Foodlink up into three distinct categories. We have our food bank, which you all know well. It's what I just talked about. We get food, we give food to you, you serve people. We also have a kitchen. Our kitchen produces about 12 to 15,000 meals a day. Our kitchen is doing everything they can to cook real quality food from scratch. We're not putting chicken nuggets and fish sticks on our menu. And we serve two particular populations. One is school-age kids. We are the vendor for the National School Lunch Program at several charter schools. We do all the after-school feeding programs in and around the city of Rochester. We do a lot of pre-K programs like Head Start. All that food is coming from us, and we take a lot of pride in the menu that we generate for kids. And the second population, which is very new to us, is as of July, we got a contract from Monroe County to do all the senior congregate feeding programs. So there's 19 senior congregate feeding programs, communal lunch basically at senior centers around Monroe County. And it's both to make sure that that older adults who are on a fixed income have a good quality meal to eat. And it's also really a lot about socialization. A lot of these senior centers are places where it's the only socialization for various folks. And it's in every single part of our county. We're really, really proud to be doing those meals now too. Not only do we cook those meals in the kitchen, but we also have the only cook apprenticeship program in New York State. So we're training people for jobs in the food industry. One of the great beauties of the food industry is that it has the lowest barriers to entry. You do not have to have any particular degree. You don't have to have any particular amount of numeracy or literacy. Probably a little bit of both of those things, but you don't have to test out at any particular level. In order to thrive in the food industry, you have to have an understanding of food safety. You have to be a good team player, and you have to show up with a curious mind. And if you're with us for a year in our paid apprenticeship program, we then connect you to jobs that are livable wage, full-time, with benefits in our community. I have one super exciting, I can't talk to people without telling this story, that one of the graduates of our fourth class, who has 2 children with developmental disabilities and was really struggling in a lot of ways, is now the first woman and first person of color to be the executive chef at one of the premier country clubs in Rochester. And she's making, as she told me, 10 times more than she ever thought she'd be able to make. And it's truly remarkable. And now, on top of that, she is now a placement for some of our other apprentices. She's now going to be mentoring these folks for years and years to come. So these programs, they really do a lot of great work. Our goal is to have a continuum of services. If you're that mom who just needs food for those 10 days, I want to make sure Third Pres has what you need to serve them. And if you're someone who says, I want to figure out what's next, I don't want to wait in the emergency food line every month, we're going to work on job training for you and everything in between. We also have what we call, so I mentioned our food bank, our kitchen, and the third bucket is our community-based programs, where we do a couple things in the community, serving people outside of our four walls. The biggest is our curbside market, which is a mobile grocery store that goes all around the community, in particular to affordable housing communities. We accept SNAP benefits. We double SNAP benefits. We are the only mobile market in the entire nation to accept WIC benefits. And we have become essentially we have helped people change their diets and their lifestyles because they can count on us to be there at the same time, the same place every week. And it's really a remarkable program that we are always looking for places and ways to grow. Churches have just never been, what we found is that a lot of churches, a lot of schools, a lot of doctors' offices want us to come. No one really wants to buy their groceries when they're at church, at school, or at the hospital. So it just doesn't really work that well. We tend to work very well when we go into affordable housing communities so people can buy food where they live. And that's what the majority of our schedule is like. You can find all of that online. And then we also have a number of educational programs. So we teach people how to shop, cook, and eat healthy on a budget. We're at the public market a couple times a week. We also just opened up what we're calling our Edible Education Center. We built a state-of-the-art kitchen, which I'd love to have. I don't know who wants to take the lead on this, but I'd love to invite Third Pres out to see our new farm on Lexington Avenue. We've had a farm there for many years, but we just put a $2 million Edible Education Center in there so that we can train people, specifically offer field trips to school-age kids to see how food is grown. The number of people in this community who never get to see how food is grown is tremendous. And every study shows if you participate in the growing of food and the cooking of food, you are more likely to try new foods. Maybe not but try. And I can tell you, my only job I ever had before Foodlink was I was a Head Start teacher, Hudson Avenue, Action for a Better Community. And when that broccoli came into the classroom for lunch, and all the adults said, "That's nasty," except for me, by the way, I didn't say it, but I felt it. When that broccoli came in, and that's the only way that a 4-year-old kid ever gets to know broccoli is over-steamed, mushy, not smelling very good. How are they ever going to want to try it? But if you see broccoli growing in the field, what a cool and beautiful plant to see grow. You see it, then you help pick it, and you cut it, and you eat it raw, and you dip it in something, and you cook it a little bit, you see how it transforms. You're so much more likely to actually want to try it. And so this whole place we built on Lexington Avenue is specifically for that purpose. And I am so close to having a contract with the Rochester City School District to get every third grader in there this year. Now, if anyone's ever worked with the city school district on a contract before, I say I'm so close, I may be 10 years away. But I really, really, really think I'm close. I really do. So we have and we also, the one thing I would say to Ted's question is we do also have a group of people whose job it is to help people sign up for SNAP benefits and for WIC benefits. And that could be a place where the pantry could look to also maybe grow a little bit. I don't know how comfortable the pantry volunteers are with helping people understand how to access these various programs. But we always should think about the emergency food world and federal nutrition programs as working in complement with each other. So if someone's coming into your food pantry every month and they're not receiving SNAP benefits, that's a red flag. Not a red flag that you shouldn't serve them, a red flag they probably should be receiving SNAP benefits. And so how can our staff help you? You can either direct them to us, which we're happy to do, or you can get the familiarity and comfortability yourselves to be able to ask people some questions to understand what their eligibility may be and help connect the dots for them. But that's a hugely important part of what we do. And I'll just share, and I'm going to close on this. During the SNAP, see what else Julia put in here. Probably some very good stuff. I mean, but just so you can see the scale of the SNAP crisis, are the visits to our website, which I think is a really interesting way to kind of demonstrate where people's heads are. Visits quadrupled in October of this year to October of last year, quadrupled. And that was people, by the way, who were looking for food and also people who were looking to contribute. Both of those things were true, just a groundswell of interest. But I think this is the most important space to end on. We purchased 1.5 million pounds of food in the last month and put it all out on our shopping list. We also opened up this SNAP line. That's the third bullet point there, which is and I'll send this to folks, but it's right on our website. It's 585-413-5091, which is just a place for people to go ask questions. We are not the county. The number of times that I was asked to speak on behalf of Monroe County and the state of New York and the federal government in the last 3 months, I'm not those things. I don't work for any of those entities. But what I find is that government oftentimes is not super interested in being proactive in communication. So we really tried our best to do two things: to communicate with the public generally. I don't tend, I mean, Beth can attest for this. I don't tend to love doing TV or radio or stuff unless I have something to say. I don't like to just do it for the sake of doing it, but I did more TV and radio. Julie did more TV and radio than we're accustomed to doing because we wanted to fill the communication gap that existed in the last month. No one knew from October 20th to the middle of November what was happening with benefits. We didn't always know, but we tried our best to share it. And we started a hotline specific so the folks could just ask questions, because sometimes that's all people need. Some people would call the line and say, hey, I've heard November benefits are not being issued. Is that true? And we would say, yeah, at this point it is true. And you know what? That was actually helpful for people to be able to hear. Yeah, it is true at this point. Here's a food pantry you can go to. Let me look up your address. Let me find the place most convenient for you. And check this place, and this place for when November benefits will be issued. Or give us your contact and we'll call you back. That is the kind of communication gap that there was, and we're trying our best to resolve it. And we're trying to do it in partnership with places like Third Pres. We accept the fact we have 135 very capable, talented staff with Foodlink. You guys consist of really hardworking, dedicated, loyal volunteers. We have a different role to play, and we try our best to play it, but we're always open to feedback, things like the boxes and otherwise. Okay, I think I've made it without, am I at 10:15? I'm at 10:10. I told you I'm like a wind-up toy. I just wanted to stop. But any questions? And I will happily answer questions about the changes to SNAP that are coming through the big bill that was passed. If you want, that's just a bit more in the weeds. It's up to you all.
Do you have enough food coming in on a monthly basis to satisfy the need?
We don't have enough, like I was mentioning before, we never have enough food from the traditional sources. But if we have enough money, then we can go buy the food. And we raised money very well in the last month. But this is not we're through the worst of the crisis, but we're probably going to lose about, I would guess, 5,000 to 10,000 people in Monroe County will lose SNAP benefits because of the bill. And so we're already at an all-time high. I think anyone who works at the pantry can attest. We're already higher than we were last year before the October crisis. So the answer is no. We always need to be fundraising and bringing in new resources.
Does it make you nervous that you're so dependent on appointments and you don't have other sources? I mean, why can some sort of arrangement be made with local Walmart stores? Why is that challenging?
Two things. One,
not being critical
Yeah.
of the organization.
Two things. I would not say that we're nervous about dependence on one place or another. I would say that if anyone ever wants to, I mean, that's the beauty of being a nonprofit, is that all of our finances are very transparent and open. We are very, very much not reliant on anyone. And if there's one place that we're most reliant, it would be New York State, actually. We get a lot of money from New York State to be able to purchase food that I'm not sure what we would do without it. But there's no individual donor or individual business that we're incredibly reliant upon. But I think the sad reality is that there's just always going to, at this point where we are now, there's going to be more need than there is donated food coming in. And we have, like, every Walmart in town will will donate small amounts at the retail level to individual members. I mentioned we connect people to Targets and Walmarts and BJ's. The difference is Walmart doesn't have a big, gigantic food procurement operation here. They don't have a headquarters here. They ship everything in from, the only access in Walmart is at the retail level. That wouldn't be true if we lived in Bentonville, where are they? Arkansas, Alabama? That wouldn't be true if we were in Arkansas. But one of the reasons why Wegmans is the blessing to us in this community that they are is because this is where their headquarters is. I would love to see more connectivity out of Tops, and we're working on that regularly. And Tops right now is doing a big food drive called Food for Families that people probably see in the store. I'd like to see them do a bit more of that regularly. But the problem is not the businesses themselves, it's in part the structure of the retail grocer sector. Does that answer make any sense?
Yeah, it does. I mean, the food is here in the local market, in those retail establishments. And so.
And every one of those retailers are donating small volumes. It's just not a huge amount of volume to donate. Like I mentioned, the greatest boon to us, not that I want food to come in off temp.
Yeah.
But when we get a full truckload of romaine lettuce, which we're gonna get in the next week because it comes in off temp because it's very delicate and Wegmans doesn't want it. There's no other grocer that has a full truckload of romaine around here. So it's just a matter of scale.
So Mitch, other places where there are Wegmans that are not, it's not the headquarters, like there's gonna be a new one in Charlotte. They may just have enough to donate to little local places.
Correct. I mean, Wegmans it certainly has, from my vantage point, has a bit more of a philanthropic arm, generally speaking. But there's 2 or 3 Wegmans distribution centers. One's here, one's in Pennsylvania. I think one might be in Maryland. And those 3 food banks get a lot of extra product. And actually, because the first one was here, obviously, I remember I was just starting at Foodlink when they opened the one in Pennsylvania, and Tom went down to help train the food bank. Like, this is how you best work with Wegmans. So yes, where there's a single retail store gets less than where there's an actual distribution center.
Do you ever have a national request of you to say, you're a good model here and we'd like to do this and like Foodlink Kentucky, or that you have an advisory capacity? Help other
Mitch or Foodlink generally?
Foodlink.
A little bit. Our curbside market is probably the single thing that stands out the most as being asked to go help train and build capacity in other places. Because there's not much that we do differently than other food banks as a food bank. We get different kinds of food. I think we communicate a little bit better with our network. I think we fundraise better on behalf of our network. But that's all just a bit biased. What we do a little bit different is our curbside is not a thing that most places don't have mobile grocery stores. Our apprenticeship program is another thing that gets some national attention. And I suspect in the next year or so, the farm we just built, the Adult Education Center, will get a lot of national attention. So we're always very happy to go help and participate. Although I do find that at the end of the day, like, it's really about what's best for the community you're in, and you know that by being there.
Yeah.
And one thing I'll just, without trying to, this is not me trying to toot my own horn, but I think one thing that makes Foodlink particularly interesting is our leadership team. Julia, myself, our COO, Tara Keller, all born and raised in Rochester, all in our early 40s, all been there for 17 years. Tom Ferraro before us was never looking to parlay Foodlink into something else. It's about trying to make the best community you can make in the place that you're in. The people, it's not just the leadership team, the people that come to work for Foodlink come to do so because they really, really care about this place.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Ray.